So to add on from the previous couple weeks, dealing with international intercourse, foreign relations, um, the United States, what it is as far as 13 colonies, what Brother Abdullah brought up as far as the Treaty of Paris. So this is just more law to add to your tool belt. As in this case, as far as why it's important to have a body politic and be part of centralized government with your nationality of people or your peers. So this is Title 28 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 0.64-1. Central or competent authority under treaties and executive agreements on mutual assistance in criminal matters. 0.64-1, central or competent authority under treaties and executive agreements on mutual assistance in criminal matters. The Assistant Attorney General, Criminal Division, in consultation with the Assistant Attorney General for National Security and matters related to the National Security Division activities shall have the authority and perform the functions of the quote-unquote central authority or competent authority under treaties and executive agreements between the United States of America and other countries on mutual assistance in criminal matters that designate the Attorney General or the Department of Justice, DOJ, as such authority. The Assistant Attorney General, Criminal Division, is authorized to redelegate this authority to the Deputy Assistant Attorneys Generals, etc., of the Criminal Division. Why am I bringing this up? You part of a competent body. Competent on what? International law, civics, which means Constitution, treaty. Now, why that matters as far as being part of a body, because a body is a nation state. And whenever you part of a nation state, that means you're invoking treaties that your ancestors may have had, right? Diversity of citizenship, right? Back to Article 3, Section 2. And if that is the case, the competent authorities that represent the United States need to be the Attorney General, because we're talking about this is codified in their law, Code of Federal Regulations on how to deal with treaty matters. So, of course, in the actual treaty, the term is plenipotentiary, which at that time it was Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, etc. We know them as the founding fathers having a treaty with our emperor. But fast forward today in real time, the competent officials, Attorney General for those people, the United States, when dealing with other nationality of people that have a treaty. So why this is important? Because when we're saying jurisdiction in any municipal courts, this is something to bring up. The fact that, hold on, not only Article 3, Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution spells out how to deal with disputes from two separate nations of people. Federal court, Supreme Court, really Supreme Court, that's a verbatim, or any court of federal jurisdiction. Now, this is another way to talk about the same thing, or reinforcement rather, is wait a minute, where's the attorney general at? That's the only people represent the United States. And states can't even talk about treaty matters. The state of whatever would not be the proper venue of court to deal with a dispute dealing with a non-US citizen. But a way to say it in a different way is, oh, where's the attorney general? It's not the people representing the state of, or the people representing the city of. That's a whole nother jurisdiction. For y'all, it's the attorney general to dispute treaty matters, potential treaty violations. Any questions on that? Want to have a dialogue on this? Want to marinate in this to see if we grasp this? Questions, thoughts, brother Ayan? I'm not sure brother Ayan or sister Ayan, but peace and love, nonetheless. Any thoughts? Any questions on this in the chat? Insightful? Anything at all?
So it's just saying only the Attorney General's office can deal with treaties
Yes.
on the national level.
Yes.
So it can't be a state, only the nation.
Yep. The entire. Yep. Brother Benjamin Bay. Peace and love, man.
Peace and love, Morris.
Peace and love.
Peace and love, Morris.
You know what? I want to read this to you, just to see what your thoughts is on this, Brother Benjamin Bay. So I just brought up Title 28, Code of Federal Regulations, Section 0.64, dealing with central or competent authority under treaties and executive agreements on mutual assistance in criminal matters. In this Code of Federal Regulations, it talks about the Attorney General or Assistant Attorney General shall have authority and act as central authority, quote unquote, or competent authority, quote unquote, under treaties and executive agreements between the United States of America and other countries on mutual assistance in criminal matters. What's your thoughts on that, man? What I put on the floor as you read that.
Like, what is this about? Like central or competent authority under the treaty. So you got to know how to operate under treaty.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, who on the because this is a Code of Federal Regulations. So I'm gonna bring up the example because you just came. I brought up the actual treaty in our case of our people, right? They call plenipotentiary. You got Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and they're having treaty negotiation with our Sultan, right?
So the good word, plenipotentiary. That's the names at the bottom.
Right, plenipotentiary. Now, when you fast forward in real time, they're not using that lingo. They're using central or competent authority under treaties. And in their codes, they're saying the assistant attorney general, the attorney general shall operate as competent authority or central authority dealing with treaties. So the reason I brought this up is that will be the channels in real time. And it's another way, if you're in the municipal court, you can bring it up. We already know Article 3, Section 2, dealing with diversity of citizenship. Then it must be on a federal level or a Supreme Court level. Now we bring this up because it's a codified, just to kind of, because you can kind of pacify because I start talking about, we want to avoid that whole sovereign citizen thing. Like, oh no. So we want to use stuff in they code of federal regulations just to get to our point, regardless. Where's the attorney general at to deal with matters dealing with treaties?
It's kind of
Where?
like not the confusion. It's kind of like using Abraham Lincoln. It's like, well, at one point, Abraham Lincoln was you guys president, and he said this. He used war powers act. So under this, whoop. So it's like these are their mans. So before you change it, this is what it was by you. But same thing, like you know how to use a treaty and know what stuff was and who they were as in the United States. You can see through the I would say connotation paperwork or adhesion contracts like this, plenipotentiaries and now they're competent authority, but authority you sign it. Yeah,
Right.
kind of like dropping off a package or something like that. But I yield, not to start to cut you with, bro.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, man. That's the feedback I was looking for, just so just to make sure everybody sees what I'm seeing. You know what I mean? Like that's what I saw. That's what I'm seeing right now.
Woo.
You know. So that's the connection, right? This is modern day plenipotentiary. So outside of just saying the court doesn't have jurisdiction, you can say everything but that in an intelligent way, and it'll show how they don't got jurisdiction. Oh, this matter needs to be in a federal level, not the municipal level. You're dealing with the non-U.S. citizen, somebody with a nationality. The more, oh, we got treaties. Has it been a treaty violation? You start going into that space. Any other thoughts, questions, and dialogue before we transition?
Probably I got one. When you say that, that means the treaties hold the weight. They're always coming from the treaty. You see, so that goes once again. Like if go back to the 1783, the proper footing. So they're speaking from the 1783 right here because the plenipotentiary then was King George via the charter. So they just hopscotching off that, bills and BS. But that made me think of that.
Wow. Any other thoughts, statements? We transition. So I had a couple interesting newspaper articles, early 1900s, published writings. Why this is important? Because keep in mind, we'll be dealing with uplifting acts, dealing with speaking to the public about our illustrious culture, and any type of bullet points we can find, like factual literary works that have been published, books, congressional records, anything factual that we can just pull up on our phone and show the people, because we need the people. Power, strength comes from the people. We the people. That's actual constitutional phrase. And it's actually trust law. Quell, peace and love. I'm not sure who that is, or Ion. But once again, peace and love. If you want to unmute and introduce yourself, that'll be great. Um, so just competency, let me look at the chat. Oh, okay. Peace and love, brother. That's a brother I met doing great missionary work, uplifting acts. Met him at the booth where I pushed the book, other things to spread this information so we can unite as a people, centralize finances, show competency, show progression every day, every week, every month. If all members are doing this, then we're not only going to grow by body count, we're going to grow economically. And then we got think tank. The whole goal is for everybody to get competent on the history and law so we can spread this info, right? So I want to pull up these newspaper clips for reference points. Because a lot of people don't know about the Moors. A lot of people think about Moors as being exclusively in Spain or North African people, and not being the original people of America. And just because we got a couple new people on here, I have to go before I continue with reinforcement of just basic standard stuff we can use. There's no debate. Title 29, Delaware Codes, is a .gov talking about Indian people, no matter the tribe, in this case Lenape. Before the term Indian, the term was Moor. Once again, Al-Moroccan, much later language such as English, American, just a different dialect. Short for Moroccan, Moor, the true indigenous people of the Americas. The Americas. Now, this once again just for reinforcement purposes, but we got new people today. These are House resolutions that you can get congressional records of. Where can you get these congressional records? At the mayor's office of Illinois, the mayor's office in Nebraska, or on a state level rather, Washington, North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, Georgia. What is it saying in these things, in these House resolutions? It's saying that Moorish Americans are teaching their people their true nationality, that they are not black Negroes, colored folk, Afros. And what else is it saying in there? That Moorish Americans are Aboriginal and indigenous to North, Central, and South America. What else is it saying in here? That Moorish Americans are the ancient forefathers and mothers and fathers of humanity. That means the human race, or the human, as I say, the Homo sapien, original man, standing these days as a commodity of descendants of the ancient Moabites, Hammatites, Canaanites, and were permitted by the old pharaohs. So I'm talking about pharaohs in America. So
no more no people.
Would you say more?
I said it seems like if there were no Moors, there would be no people.
Right. 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 So in real time, what we are seeking to do is unite the people that fell from grace, illustrious culture, under the black Negro color paradigm, dead culture, low vibrational activity. That's why it's history and law, because you got to get the history to know the nobleness of the culture. And then that determines your political status, which is Constitution, treaty, rights of indigenous people. It's a different jurisdiction. All right, so let me go back to the article. I just want to lay a little foundation. So this is a newspaper article, 1901, Washington, D.C. In it, of course, it's the colored American, right? That's from the perspective of the colonists. But we know black, Negro, color is not nationalities. So in this, article. It speaks of the African and the Egyptian and the Moor. The Moor, the Asiatic and the Jew and the Arab. The context of this newspaper. Moor in the same breath of Asiatic and the Jew. The Moors are the Jews. Moor cross-reference, Battle of Tangier, also known as the Battle of Jews Hill. The Battle of Jews Hill. The Battle of Tangier, also known as the Battle of Jews Hill, was a battle of a detachment of English Tangier garrison under the command of Governor Tangier Lord. Now that was the colonists, the English colonists in that Moroccan state called Tangier. And then you have the commander for our people, Kadir, Galleon. Now, the Moroccan state at that time successfully ambushing the 500-strong English force. Galleon's men killed about all but 30 of them. The battle was the bloodiest defeat suffered by the Tangier garrison during the English occupation of Tangiers. It was an occupation. So we successfully got the foreigners out of there. But my point in bringing this up is the fact how Moors are interchangeably known as Jews. The Battle of Jews Hill. Let's just use our common sense, right? So we want to use this type of logic when we're speaking with our people, when we're making correlations. That's the whole point, or the context of what I'm talking about today. Newspaper clip, speaking of Moor, Asiatic, the Jew. See how I took that and then took you to a reference? That's speaking to the people with scholarship. We don't want to get into emotional, vibrational, arguing about religion. Keep it always the Moor, the scholar, the illuminated one. So that's what Tahuti, right? Jew come from Tahuti, what this means. The illuminated one, or one that knows knowledge anyway, right? So we want to make the Moor look good. I came across a Moor. He gonna tell his family like, oh, he was knowledgeable. That's the reputation of the Moors, right? Another newspaper clip. Desert Evening News is a Utah newspaper publishing. This was published January 19th, 1901. The Land of Othello. Whoever doesn't know the Shakespeare play Othello the Moor, reference that. Strange features and characters of Mohammedan stronghold. Before I continue with the newspaper clip, we must go back to our authority, recorded by the illustrious Prophet Noble Drew Ali, a man that brought this information that we're speaking of today to America, 1912 to approximately 1928-29, about our illustrious nobility. And he was responsible for uniting over 20,000 people and inheriting, what's the brother name from Jamaica? The forerunner, Marcus Garvey. He inherited 80% of his members once Marcus Garvey went to jail or got, I think, deported. Kind of shaky with that, but regardless, Noble Drew Ali united thousands of people, and he actually bankrupted the United States in the 20s. We're talking about during the time of the mafia, prohibition, the roaring 20s. It was still gold and silver. It wasn't even paper yet. It wasn't no Federal Reserve Act, none of that type of stuff. In this document, just wanted to give like a summary to whoever didn't know Noble Ali was. He takes the civic organization and incorporates a corporate name. So he took Moore's Holy Temple of Science and incorporated it as the Moorish Science Temple of America. But my point in bringing this up is Muhammad, the faith of Muhammad in America. Why I'm bringing this up is because in this newspaper clip, it talks about strange features and characters of the Mohammedan stronghold. Speaking of the Moors, this is a United States or colonial newspaper, so they're going to say some derogatory things and referring to us, but it's for context purposes for factual of who Moors are, Moorish people, and that is people with a nationality. They're not black, Negro, color. That's the whole point of the context. So Moorish customs of 1907, cooking in clay basins, and later we're going to see cooking in clay is an Aboriginal and indigenous custom of people from America, Central America, like South America and Peru, Belize. We'll tie that in. So Moorish customs of 1907, cooking in clay basins and drinking from goat skin, women clad blankets, and men in gowns. A land of pigtails and turbans. This is what was published in 1901. And keep in mind, this was before Noble Drew Ali was on the scene. So this is another thing I want to bring up. Is a context of Moorish science or nationality and how we're putting this out here to the people. Because it has been misrepresented. And what I mean by that is you have, right, Noble Drew Ali came on the scene, but Noble Drew Ali did not create a Moorish American nationality. That's not. He didn't invent that. He's not the inventor of a nationality. He didn't coin that. As we see, it's a newspaper in 1907 speaking about Moors. So keep that in mind. We're not worshiping anybody, but we pay homage and respect to the great works of all great men.
That's real important because it shows that Noble Drew Ali is just validating what these papers are without saying he's validating. Because I was thinking the whole time, I was like, this dude Noble Drew Ali's on the scene out here in 1901, 1901. I was like, and then you go to the authority, I'm like, whoa, that lets you know, like, Noble Drew Ali didn't invent Moors or Moorish Americans, you know, and because that's what it said a lot. So I mean, I just want to say that was really important. That what the brother said, that Noble Drew Ali didn't invent it. He's just really showing you and giving you key points so we can do this right here. I you.
Yep, that's fine. That's fine. Another newspaper clip, Desert Evening News, Utah newspaper. Speaking of a Moorish sultan, so all that rhetoric about sovereign citizen, Moorish, trying to get away with something, that's not a made up thing. Moorish, just like you say Polish, of or relating to the Moor, right? Moorish sultan, they know about this. United States personnel know about the empire, etc. Unlike any other Moor, look at the terms. This is a sultan, Abdul Aziz. And matter of fact, he's in the front of the Quran. That's the sultan that essentially passed the keys to Noble Drew Ali. You know, from one of our last sultans.
like a bomb.
You know what I mean?
He's like in the first pages of the Circle 7.
Yeah, Circle 7.
Yeah, yeah, Aziz. Yeah, well, that's important. My bad to keep jumping out. I was like, well, yeah, it's like bomb at the bomb. Like, yeah.
You feel me? That's beautiful though. But once again, this is the dojo. We're gonna get sharp. We're gonna have concepts for our tool belt. When we're talking to the public, we can come with the facts, reference points on. Look, this is your illustrious culture. That whole slave trade you brought here off a boat from Africa. No, you was a noble. You had emperors in America, pharaohs in America. It's time to unite, organize amongst ourselves today, and invoke this right rights of indigenous people and just the behavior, the character, right? Because anybody else you see with a nationality, you go back to Chinatown, Koreatown, you see how they behave, you see they got businesses, you see they're passing things down to their heirs, they know trust law. Now we're talking about the activity of who the Moor is, or whoever nationality. It's an illustrious. You got respect to your ancestors. You're moving different, right? Versus people that don't know their culture. Their interest is different. Their heart is colder. They're not as happy. They point the finger at other people, or why the condition of their circumstances was the way it is. Everything but working together. But it's not. It's not. You gotta know. You gotta know your illustrious culture. You can't just. If you just think you was a slave, I got shipped here from Africa. Oh, yeah, of course, it makes sense why we got this subconscious inferiority complex, right? But now we got something to compare to. And remember, this information was buried to an extent, even though it is a public record. But you got to know about it to look for it, right? So, oh, any questions on before I transition? Anything? Any other thoughts, comments?
No thoughts, comments, brother.
Okay. So this is Executive Order 13107. This was implemented December 10th, 1998. This is dealing with the implementation of human rights treaties. So the bullet points: implementation of human rights obligations. It shall be the policy and the practice of the government of the United States being committed to the protection and promotion of human rights and fundamental freedoms, fully to respect and implement its obligations under international human rights treaties to which it is a party. So if it's a party to a treaty, it's a party to a contract. This is a binding contract. United Nations, the International Labor Organization, and the Organization of American States. It's obligated to. Why is this important? On two fronts. Because another contract that we just looked at, this is tied to the Declaration on Human Rights, right? Human rights treaties and Organization of American States. Let me address the Organization of American States before I go to the human rights treaties. The Organization of American States. Who is that? The acronym is OAS, but it's an Organization of American States. American. Now, that's the issuing body, international body that issued this document, the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So we see that they're obligated. We just read something codified. Let me go back to it. So y'all see the connection where I'm going with this. This is codified executive order 13101, which states that binding contracts under the Organization of American States and any human rights contracts are binding. So let's address the rights of indigenous people, since we see that it's under that umbrella. And since we had just addressed in the House resolution that Moorish Americans are Aboriginal and indigenous to North, Central, and South America. So we clearly qualify to utilize this document, right? The rights of indigenous people. Makes sense, right? What are some of the things in this document? The American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People applies to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. House Resolution, Moorish Americans are Aboriginal and indigenous to North. Okay, this applies to us. Self-identification as indigenous people will be a fundamental criterion for determining to whom this declaration applies. Oh, how do you identify? State of California, state of whatever is your identification. Is that a nationality? Oh, you don't qualify for this. You don't know you got a nationality. You're awarded the state, minority, 3/5, Jim Crow, chattel property. All right, so I wanted to go through that. Any questions on the executive order? Any statements, comments, anything anybody wants to add? Why we can use executive order 13107 to assert jurisdiction. On a variety of different levels. You could be putting things in trust. You could put something in trust as our organization, Khalifa Society. Us as ambassadors, we get competent on history and law so we can speak to the public. That means we're getting more members. That means we're getting more dues, $10 a week. Now we get to a point, we got all this, we got fixer-upper money, we got, right? So we see it's a property, we put it in trust, we fix it up. We got the adverse possession thing covered and the estate thing covered. Put it on the public record. What's going to be the principle of us conveying this in trust? On what principles? Based on what we read in this document. Rights of indigenous people. Right? Because I'm not going to read the whole document. I'm directing you to things, and whoever is new to, the whole key is to take notes so you can read the entire document in its entirety. But in that document, the rights of indigenous people, it speaks of we have the right to our land and resources, traditional forms of ownership, such as in trust, right? Because you need to have things in trust to pass down to your heirs to keep it going perpetual. That's what we did ancestrally, is put things in trust and create estates. That's why you got the house of this, the house of that, the clan of this. That's designating trust and generational. Whenever you talk about a dynasty or an empire, that's essentially multiple houses of our people and clans of our people that united. But anywho, was it clarity? Was this insightful? Does this make sense on the context of why I'm bringing this up? Any thoughts at all? All right, so
It just reminds me of my bad.
No, go ahead.
Law of occupation. So if you read the law of occupation, it speaks about humanitarian law. And right here is human rights. So it goes back to humanitarian law. And since our land is occupied, even though they have our resources, we still have the right to them. And these documents that you're showing is showing that we have the rights to self-identify, teach our land and resources, so we can get more and more on board, and get more dues, and build our communities. But yeah, it's definitely just a law occupation or humanitarian law instead of civil law.
Yep. Yep. You got Prince Bay in the chat. Makes a lot of sense. Like how showing and proving the facts easy to learn. You make it very simple. Islam, brother Prince Bay. So we took this document. We see the two highlighting factors: Organization of American States and human rights treaties. So let's go to some of the human rights treaties. One of them is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This was a contract back in 1948. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and are endowed with reason and conscience, and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. I brought this up a couple weeks ago on the importance of having a brotherhood, because that's humane. That's what, back to highlighting other nationalities of people. They work together. They have a brotherhood, sisterhood, etc. That's a signifier of being classified as human. Working together with your people. What's the name of this document? Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'm not going to read the whole document once again. Whoever is not familiar with it, please read it in its entirety. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by Constitution or by law. You're talking about Constitution, we're talking about treaties. When you talk about national tribunal, you're talking about elected officials internally of a republic form of government. What's a republic form of government? Same people with the same nationality that organize amongst themselves and created elected officials, created XYZ for the benefit of we the people, or that, whatever. So you have the right to that, do that. Right? This is also mentioned in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. You have the right to a republican form of government. So it's just talked about in a different way on an international level. What else is highlighted? What else is highlighted in here? Let's see. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. So you can't, especially dealing with indigenous people, you can't, a foreign organization, whatever corporation, you can't force people to belong to it.
You look at Article 19 says about the media, the right to express, and Prophet said our strongest thing we have is our media. So right now, whether you're using social media for anything, you have the right to teach, as a brother does, you know what I mean? So that's important as well.
Yep. And Article 15 too. Everyone has the right to a nationality. Back to the House resolution. Moors are teaching their people who they are. They're not black, Negro, colored, Latino, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Indian. We have a nationality, which comes with a culture, which comes with an identity, which comes with you being human. They can't force you to be non-human. That's a violation of the Declaration of Human Rights. Any questions on this document? Any other things that anyone wanted to add? All right, so we see the two highlights that arises itself out of this document, or this executive order, rather. Executive Order 13107. It's going to take you on a journey. I'm going to read an article. The Nanticoke and More Folk Medicines. In the essay, Nanticoke and Moore's Folk Medicine by C.A. Westlodger, he speaks about the Aboriginals who called themselves Moors and Nanticokes. He says the Delawares, Shawnee, Seneca, Maishan, and other Eastern Indians claim that their forebears originally received their knowledge of Matapasikanum, or magical and herbal science, from a tribe called the Nanticoke. He goes on to say, regarding a community of Aboriginals in Kent County, Delaware, that locally these people are called Moors. And he further says, investigations among the Delaware Moors starting in the fall of 1941 led me to conclude that the ancestry of many of the families included both Delaware and Nanticoke Indians. These people also were classified as Negro on the books. So once again, Black, Negro, colored, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Indian, Native American, West Indian are not nationalities. Those are classifications on books for bookkeeping, for wards, people that don't know who they are. These are not nationalities. Wards of the state are controlled by the corporate people that run the corporate state. Since you're not part of a nation state, you're going to be controlled by a corporate state and be the gasoline for their industry. The gas of what makes their industry go. Our peace and love, brother Ion. Oh yeah, well, we're gonna chop it up, man. Whenever you get a chance, we're gonna just hit me too, so we can dialogue. So, why is this important? And before I move forward, didn't we just read in the Delaware codes the Nanticoke, Kent County? Isn't that in this document? Peace and love.
Islam.
Islam, Brother King L. So
Islam, yeah, it's part of self-martyrdom.
Islam. So this is the connection. This is how you draw connections. This is called cross-referencing, to be specific. And when you're talking to our people, that's the only vein you want to be in is logic, scholarly, proof, facts, and make it make sense. It's going to show that you're competent. You're the noble. You're the Moor. Because we're talking about Moors that was known for what? Being noble. The masters of calculus, algebra, storing herbs, universities, Oxford, anything you can think of, astronomy, cosmology, knowing the angles of light to determine your character. That's heavy. So in real time, we got to display that, or at least be trending towards wanting to display that. And when you're talking to the public, they're gonna get a sense of, oh yeah, this is where it's at. These are our people we're talking to. We are our brother's keeper. We don't want our brothers just with their head cut off around here. if we got a heart chakra. So let's just talk to them with some competence. So the Nanticoke, you see in this essay by C.A. Westlodger, the Nanticoke, and we saw it in the Delaware codes that we can use as res judicata, right? Article 4, Section 1, full faith and credit. We can use the Delaware codes to substantiate the fact that Indian is a misnomer. We're Moors. So we're tying this essay with that. He goes on to say regarding the community of Aboriginals in Kent County, Delaware, that locally these people are called Moors. And he further says investigations among the Delaware Moors starting in the fall of 1941 led me to conclude that the ancestry of many of the families included both Delaware and Nanticoke Indians, quote unquote. These people were also classified as Negro in the books of the Europeans, and Westlodger documents the struggles of these people against that designation. So the people didn't want to be called Negro. This is a clay figure of a Hopewell mound builder woman from the Turner Pyramid and Mound Complex near Cincinnati, Ohio. We're talking about pyramids in America. Clay figures in America of our people. This was before the cross-Atlantic slave trade. Pyramids built by our people in Mexico City, Peru, Belize, before the cross-Atlantic slave trade. This is a very significant statement. All of the so-called millions of Aboriginals that were said to have been wiped out were not all wiped out, but are in fact us. The Moors, or so-called Indians on the eastern seaboard of the United States, were a maritime people and were the same Moors found on the other side of the Atlantic on the coast from Southwest Africa all the way up to England, Ireland, Scotland, Denmark, etc. In fact, the people called the Danes and Vikings were actually Aboriginal Moorish navigators. It's a book called Ancient and Modern Britain, Volume 1 by David McRitchie on page 299. It states, it seems likely that the Creek men or pirates were chiefly of the races of Himbri, or the quote-unquote Black Danes, and the Maori, which was another derivative of Moor, or Blackamoors. He also says on the same page, they are better known in modern history under their general designation of Vikings, his spelling, same of Viking meaning, or Creek men. The quote-unquote white Europeans found among the Vikings were the white serfs, the peasants, that David McRitchie said the Danes and the Vikings were terrorizing and kidnapping. These Moors or Danes also made them pay a tribute called the Danesgild, from which was later derived the term blackmail. Now I want to stop right here. So for one, there's levels to this. In school, they teach that Vikings are blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. That's one. Once you get past that paradigm, you see, oh, we were the real seafarers. And we weren't Vikings in the sense that we was running around just with no government structure, just terrorizing stuff. No, the term was tribute. When you look up what tribute means, that's when a subject is pretty much paying rent for being in the land that's not theirs. So if you're paying rent to, I mean, you're paying rent to a government, because it was spelled out that they'll do that amongst, in our case, a sultan. And we just read in the treaty, they plenipotentiaries or the ambassadors at that time. In that treaty, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Barclay. So it wasn't just we were running around just sinking ships, and we were doing stuff like that because they failed to make a payment. They violated the contract. So we would ransack their stuff, etc. Of course, other things went on, but I'm just giving you bullet points for context right now.
So were we like Big Worm? Like we pulled up on the sea? It's like, I need that.
Hey, it's crazy, man. But see, but it was once again, it was organized though. It was a reason that they failed to pay. or paid a tribute, right? So here we have a Moorish brazier found among the remains of the Vikings. These maritime people called Danes, Vikings, and Blackamoors are the same Moors found along the rivers and creeks on the east coast of the United States and called Indians. These are the remnants of that ancient Atlantean empire, or they're trying to say Atlantis empire. The dominions of Amexem that spanned the Atlantic and dominated the land on both sides. We are the direct descendants of these Moors. David McRitchie speaks of the Moors or Indians in Britain as being the same in appearance and culture as the ones in this hemisphere. So modern European is making an observation, and he's like, people in America, original people of America, original people so-called Britain, they're looking the same over here. Right? The Moors are Aboriginal and indigenous to Europe as well, right? The original British, the original Scottish, original Dutch is the Moors. This is what accounts for all you hear coming from the Europeans now about the Vikings and the Norse discovering America. Well, I got news for them. Those so-called Vikings you talk about were originally Moors. This Moorish paradigm is like the Moses rod. It is definitely swallowing up all other paradigms. Europeans were used by the so-called Danish and Viking Moors as peasant serfs. So the modern European, what we think of, serfs, Slavs, in the inferior position. The so-called Danish and Viking Moors were used the Europeans as serfs to work the feudal estates of the noble class of Moors, who were also known as cavaliers. The European women were sold largely as concubines to fill the harems of rich and noble Moors. This is not something that Moors should be proud of. It is this which ultimately led to the enslavement of the Moors by their former Slavs and serfs. So later in the game, our Slavs and serfs would go to war. There's a lot of things that went down. You know, we start having intercourse with the harem. And now we're talking about a bloodline now that we're talking about the right of blood, and estate, inheritance. Things start getting tricky. And yeah, empires start falling for a lot of different reasons, infighting, a lot of different stuff. This is a picture of a Moorish Norman knight and his European concubine wife. So the book Ancient and Modern Britons, this is the picture. And now you know the context of the images. This was this brother. She was the part of the harem of this brother right here. So this is a picture of a Moorish Norman knight and his European quote-unquote concubine wife. When the European began to free themselves, the modern European began to free themselves and overcome the Moors who were oppressing them in Europe. They began to colonize the lands owned by the Moors in Europe, as well as the eastern seaboard of the United States, right? And that was a quote from, once again, Ancient and Modern Britons, page 229 through 230. Well, actually, I'm about to read that now. The country of the Moors, or Morimen of the North, was colonized by Norman Dutch people under the supervision of David I and his grandson, Malcolm IV. The native Moors, or quote-unquote Indians, who may have been the early Pictish or Danish stocked, the Picts, right? These are Aboriginal indigenous European tribes of Moors. Danes, where you get Danish, right, people, the original Danish, were first overcome after many severe conflicts. When this was finally accomplished, Malcolm IV removed them all from the land of their birth and scattered them throughout the other districts of Scotland, both beyond the hills and on the other side thereof, so that not even a native of the land abode there. and he stalled therein his own peaceful people. This was around the middle to late 1500s. McRitchie then notes this plantation of Moray, as it was called, was distinctly a feudal prototype of the plantation of Virginia. So he's saying the plantation of Virginia and what he's seeing in Europe was identical. Thus, the white quote unquote people who were enslaved and terrorized by the Moors of Europe freed themselves under the Catholic Church. And when you read books like Moors and Masonry by Brother Abdullah, he goes into how the Catholic Church created these foundations essentially to ransom the Slavs from our people. So we would have, they didn't pay tribute for whatever violations, we would have them, capture them, and hold them for ransom. The Catholic Church would ransom and free them. Later, that's gonna be the Catholic Church military, the people they were freeing, because now they got allegiance to the Catholic Church now. And this was all strategic by the Catholic Church. Because later that would be the factions that will, do the papal bulls, Spanish Inquisition, and they're gonna have foot soldiers to do this. The former Slavs that were captive by the Moors. So I wanted to highlight that too. Freed themselves under the Catholic Church by mixing and aligning themselves with other Moors. And that part too. So that and mixing with the harem was two major factors and motivating powers for their uprise against us, or basically infighting. Basically. They then overcame the Moors who oppressed them and took their heads and put them on reservations or outrightly exterminated them. This colonization technique was perfected first in Europe and then duplicated on the eastern seaboard of the United States under the auspices and guidance of none other than Sir Francis Bacon. So this is just context, historical reference points that we could point people to. Another one, in Ancient and Modern Britons, page 374 through 375, he states the Englishmen who had colonized the western shores of the Atlantic not more than a generation or two before Groves spoke of the Indians there as being as dark as gypsies. So he's saying the Indians as dark as gypsies. Remember, this is a non-Moorish, author. He's just stating the facts, and this is a great reference point just to, see the accounts of a non-biased party. He's saying the Indians was dark as the gypsies. In 1676, the native race of New England were spoken of indifferently as Indians and Moors, and our British Indians are also remembered as Moors. Wait a minute, the British Indians? So that shows you Indian is a tag, period. That's not a nationality. And it was coined by the British East India Company. They tagged our brothers in Hindustan Indian. They tagged our people in America Indian. They tagged the original people in Britain Indian. So we can clearly see it's a misnomer, just like the Black, Negro, colored, Hispanic, Latino, right? And once again, when we're talking to our people, we want to just bring the receipts up, bring the reference points up from different angles. He continues by telling us that large companies of Moors or Black people roamed up and down the country, rather more than 100 years ago, taking very considerable contribution from the farming classes and others, besides being possessed of many fierce and aggressive qualities. It is seen that Moors were also, here's the bullet points, Moors were also known as Danes and Vikings, that they enslaved and enacted tribute from the European peasant and serf farmers, called dangild or blackmail, the tribute of the Black Army, quote unquote. 3, that they were on both sides of the Atlantic, speaking of our people being on both sides, before it wasn't brought here on a boat. that the term Moor and Indian were interchangeably applied to them. What's the other bullet point? That they were a maritime seafaring nation of people, meaning we went back and forth way before Columbus was thought of. 6, the Europeans rose up, assisted by other Moors, took the Moorish lands and enslaved them, exterminated them, and or put them on reservations. These Moors, also known as Danes, Vikings, Picts, etc., were regularly traveling back and forth across the Atlantic. So not only were they going back and forth from America to so-called Africa, but to so-called Europe, the whole world, and are the descendants of the ancient Atlanteans, who were also known as the Phoenicians, the Canaanites, the Egyptians, etc. And this is a picture of ancient Phoenician with a fez on, a Moroccan headdress, Moorish headdress, picture of a Phoenician. Well, they called our people Phoenician because we know phonics were the creators of the alphabet. So the foreigner called our people Phoenician. But that's not a nationality. We're the Moors. Phoenician navigator with black skin and fez on his head. Another independent source showing that the so-called Indians on the eastern seaboard, Newfoundland or Terra Nova, were Moors comes from a book recommended to me by Brother Shalama called Africans and Native Americans by Jack D. Forbes. Forbes shows in this book how many so-called Native American Indians were sold into slavery in Africa and Europe, the exact opposite direction of what we were taught the slave trade went. These Native Americans or Indians were classified as Negroes and blacks, and Moors and slaves in the slave book of Seville, Spain, and elsewhere. So this is more reference points. I think that's enough for this session as far as historical context and where we could point our people in a direction to get this info on unbiased. Because you know how our people is today. They're gonna think, oh, it's a religion, you're trying to convert me, and I ain't gonna put that on all our people, because like I say, I'm dealing with people at least 5-6 days a week, and there's some intelligent people. They hear something sound-minded, it's sound-minded, but of course you can't, everybody ain't the same, but I think there's more people with sense than not sense. I would say that. Peace, Empress Cola Lee L. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, anything they wanted to share? Islam Empress. Anybody wanted to add anything?
I'm gonna go back and rewatch the Vikings show for sure. Because I was deep into it for sure. And now it make a lot of sense what was going on in the show. And they had all this stuff and making them look like mad savages.
Right.
The wild stuff in the church.
Yeah, man. And that's the whole thing, the savage situation, man.
Well,
You got something, brother? King L?
yeah, I wanted to. I was kind of surprised you came with that. I wasn't even, you know what I mean, because I came late and everything. So that's the price I pay. But the Vikings actually, me personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I looked up my name, my grandfather told me that I was a Gullah Geechee, and when I started doing, drawing the roots to it and everything, and he swore, he was like, no, it's French. He's like, basically letting me know, like, it wasn't because some Albion that spoke French put it on this. It's like, it's coming from over there, you feel me? And when I did my own research, it went to Normandy, and the Normans actually were, like how you said, if you look at them, if you take away all the, the cultural talk and all the mysteries and all of that, you just look at them politically, they were Vikings. Vikings is actually a description. You get what I'm saying? I think it's like a Scandinavian word used to describe them. You know what I mean? the landmass they was from is Normandy. And what makes that so interesting in the Moorish paradigm is that the Normans, unlike the rest of what we now call French, they moved around a lot because you got like the Norman conquest, right, where they go into England and take those names in there. So it just goes to show how they I know just with my name alone, it was it's Rivers, right? So you would just think, at first before I even went into taking it directly, I'm thinking of some Indians that hung by a river that were eventually freed and called rivers or some shit like that. You know what I mean? And then when I learned, when you get into etymology and deal with it from a nationality standpoint, it was the La Rivieres, and the Ruh was making it masculine, and it was really like the Iveres in the in between. And when we look at it, like in the Moors, I've studied with a lot of groups. The Moors are the only one to present not only us creating Latin, but not just saying that, just to quote it and say, "Did you know?" But actually dealing with it, right? So this is where I've seen the science of the Creole and the coastal languages in the V and the B being interchangeable when you transliterate it, meaning that when we see all these names like Riveres and all these different names, I can go down the list of all these with IVER, right? And maybe an A at the end or something different at the front, whether it be between the R or the L, making it masculine or feminine. But they're dealing with the name Iber, which we go back to the Bible would be like Eber. So these would be, if you take it back to the the Table of Nations, these would be the indigenous people of that land that we're calling Hebrew before any Abraham or any of that. You feel what I'm saying? So this is going with the Moabite and the. So I just say all that to say, when I look into the Vikings and I look at it from a national standpoint, like how you talking about mixing with the Danes and this and that, you just break out that box and just see, hey, it's Scandinavian. You'll see that it fits the whole entire Moorish paradigm. Them wearing the two horns on the head, like the Carthaginians.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? Them having locks and braids, like French braids. You know what I'm saying? Them having the quilts. It's never ending when you start. I even read that they dug them up and it was Arabia written on their shields.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah, man. Oh, before I
even
forget,
like their different titles they had, like in the South, I think they were called Magia, like the Magia, like they fit into the whole more. You know what I mean? Everything we say with the Phoenician, Carthaginian, you know what I mean? It's all there with the Vikings. If you could break out of the spell they put on you in elementary, like you said, the first thing they're going to show you is the blonde hair, blue eyes. So your whole life you're battling with seeing all these signs of what's obviously the Vikings. You know.
right? Yeah, 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 man.
And
And
what's funny about that, I'm just thinking this as we're talking, isn't that the group that they say when they say, oh, Europeans came here before Columbus, look at the Vikings, right? So they always say, look at
right, right.
that's the
Yeah,
Moors.
that's the Moors. Yeah, exactly,
Come on, man.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And also before I forget, this was another newspaper clip from 1904. Um, and I know you came late, but earlier we was tying in how it was earlier newspaper clips in this space that was before Noble Jew Ali that was talking about our people being Moors and things of that nature. And we were just saying the context of how we want to talk about, you know, honoring what Noble Jew Ali did for waking us up in thousands, about this information, but not praising him and idol worshiping. And we were using these newspapers to show that, he didn't create or coin the phrase Moors or Moorish American. You know what I mean? He just woke us up to that fact. But so this is another newspaper clip from this was published the St. Louis Republic,
Mhm.
1904, and it talks about a city hall that was built. And I know it's kind of small, but so the color scheme, so it's talking about But for one, look at the arches and the domes. You already know that's Alhambra, that's Moorish architecture. Most of us know that, but it talks about specifically right here how it's Moorish. The color scheme is rich in red, ivory, gold, and Moorish blue. It even gave it a it even gave the blue. I know it's a black and white newspaper clip, but they called it Moorish blue.
Yes, sir.
So the reason once again, this is just tools that we'll have when we're talking to the common man and woman on an intellectual level about certain things about Moors and who we are as a people and the signs and symbols that are left, behind. There was another one I was talking about Moors as being the Hebrews, basically. Because you had brought that up. That was my original. Oh, here's another one. Another for Washington, D.C., the colored American. But when you start reading the document, you see, look, Negroes derived from the Latin term nigger, they're saying meaning black.
Mhm.
The American edition of Walker's dictionary gives the following terms and definitions. Moor, a marsh, and we look at marsh, it just means dark. And they're associated with Negro. Moorish, marshy, Negro, black, Moor. Now this is a context. This is a newspaper coming from a colonist essentially, dealing with a colored woman. All right. You see we got other articles in here. But the reason I'm highlighting this because it's gonna take you to the Moor in the context of that's the original inception. People that have been classified as Negro are really Moors. So I'll be use, stuff like this. And back to the Mohammedan situation, referring to Moors as being Mohammedan peoples. Going back to this document once again, our authority from the Prophet Nabi Ali, how he speaks about the great Quran of Muhammad established the faith of Muhammad in America. Why he uses terms like we're Mohammedans. So I'm just cross-referencing from, documents that have nothing to do with the Moorish paradigm, etc. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that. Oh, another res judicata. You can also attach this document right here to Article 4, Section 1. It has full faith and credit. This is an international court of justice. It is dealing with the rights of nationals of the United States of America and Morocco. The case was France versus the United States of America. When you look this up, they're going to try to like smoke screen it as we're talking about the Kingdom of Morocco. So I'm going to highlight the part that's of interest to us. And this is all stuff we use, exercise as a body of people, as a body. So consular jurisdiction in French zone of Morocco as based on bilateral treaties, most favored nation clauses, and multilateral treaties, meaning of dispute, quote unquote, in Treaty of 1836 between Morocco and the United States. So see how it's taking you to the jurisdiction of the empire as it relates in their codified law on jurisdiction. Now, once we fast forward back to the document, the reason is repetition, just so everybody can get the context of that executive order we just read earlier, and put that on a side to side with this document. I'm sorry, not the executive order, but Code of Federal Regulations. So the Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General, is the competent authority to deal with treaty matters. Put that on the side with this document we just read. Now you got two pieces of res judicata, things that you can use admissible in court to establish the fact of one, who is the personnel that has jurisdiction to deal with a competent body, nation state clan, they're going to call it embassy or consulate. That's what they're going to call it. Anything foreign to the United States Federal Corporation, but we're not foreign to the land. But that's the context of your competency. You got to know exactly where you're coming from when you're using certain things. But use that with this to assert the treaty. Now, all you got to do is just know the treaty. Now, I know this is the 1787 one, but it was a treaty after this, 1836. That would be the last treaty before pretty much, if it doesn't get re-ratified, it continues. It gets every 50 years, it just reenacts itself. So it's still continuing to this day. You would enforce the articles of the treaty, whatever your position is. So I wanted to reiterate that as well. Any questions on that? They're pretty straightforward. Any thoughts, statements?
Pretty
straightforward. All right.
Yeah.
So, and this, once again, just a quick, what I'm about to read right here, just a quick timeline that we could share, with the people. Additionally, before there was the United States of America, there were 13 colonies: French, Dutch, English, British, etc. on the East Coast. These colonies were established based on relationships with the reigning Sultan of Morocco and the prospective crowns at the time. For example, the Virginia Commonwealth, an English colony, was established based on diplomatic relations with Abu Faiz Abdullah, Emperor of Morocco, between 1603 and 1608, and King James I, King of England, from 1603 to 1625. That was his office reign. The population of these colonies at the time contained Slavs, or modern Europeans, who were considered vagabonds, thieves, and scum of their respective nation. Keep in mind that the population within these colonies were under the status of European subjects and under the jurisdiction of whomever was king or queen. As time passed, the European subjects started to rebel based on the facts that 1, taxes were burdensome, 2, they were mistreated by their crowns. This would lead to the Boston Tea Party, where colonists tossed all the tea off the boat because of the heavy taxation levied on the tea by their crown. They painted their faces dark and put feathers in their hair to portray the Moors, Moroccans, Al-Moroccans, the Americans, to cast blame on the original people of the land, which did not work. This would lead to the intolerable acts of 1774, which were a number of laws to punish the European subjects for their actions, such as a blockade of the Boston Harbor, so no commerce could be done. It was also stated by the crown that European subjects owed restitution to the East India Company for destroying their product, the tea that they threw off the boat, and painted their faces black, act like they didn't do it, right? This led to the formation of the First Continental Congress, the Second Continental Congress, the Declaration of Independence, and the Articles of Confederation. All during these reformations of the United States, or what ultimately would become the United States, you had people before George Washington, such as John Hanson, Benjamin Banneker Bay, and others before George Washington. The Declaration of Independence and Articles of Confederation, when the 13 European colonies decided to form a union amongst each other. This European Union was called the United States of America, but clearly they are not Americans. They were Europeans. At this point, the various European subjects had no protection and were considered refugees on foreign soil because they were no longer part of a recognized nation. Due to this fact, the new European body politic called the United States had to enter into a treaty with the original people of the land. So we get this, but that part of the history, I find when I'm speaking to the people in the public, it sets a tone where you got their attention. This is history that's not talked about like that. So always keep that in mind, that it may be repetition for us, but always, keep in mind that it's new for a lot of other people. Any thoughts, statements? Anything anybody wanted to add?
Yes, Islam. Yeah, I was just wanted to make a statement on the Declaration of Independence. It was written by the same vagabonds and peasants. It wasn't written by esquires. So that document is really nothing because it wasn't stamped and approved by Esquire. These was peasants. These was homeless people. They was in the middle of nowhere. They wasn't British. They was British subjects, but they wasn't of royalty or nobility to write a document like this. So it's not a valid document. I yield the floor.
That was a good point. And that's back to the Treaty of Paris that the brother Abdullah brought up the last couple of weeks. That was the only thing that validated all those transitions that we just talked about. The First Continental Congress, Second Continental Congress, Articles of Confederation, Declaration of Independence. None of that was legit. None of that was legitimate until the Treaty of Paris, when their higher ups officially stamped it. So I appreciate it.
So the Treaty of Paris also verified the fact that the so-called Revolutionary War wasn't won by the so-called Americans or the Albions that used to be the British subjects. They didn't win that war. It was never won. You never find any documentation stating that they won the war. It never happened. So they never received their independence from the British Crown. And that's why it went into the 13 colonies mentioned with the Viz to it. Because they never gained their independence, truly gained their independence away from the British Crown.
Right.
I yield the floor.
Wow. And for everybody that came in after I went through this, I was tying in the correlation with the whole Jew situation and how we can use that to show the Moor and the Jew is one and the same. The Battle of Tangier, also known as the Battle of Jews Hill, was a battle of our nation state of people from that created the Moorish state Tangier, and basically fought off the colonization of the English over there. All right. Let me see, who else? I was going to transition and conclude today with a chapter from the Quran. If anybody else had any thoughts, please put them on the floor. I'll leave off. Okay. I think it was the children. Yeah, there we go. All right, so this is chapter 23, Circle 7, Holy Quran, Holy Instructions for Thy Children. Consider thou art a parent, the importance of thy trust, the being thou hast produced. It is thy duty to support. Upon thee also it dependeth whether the child of thy bosom be the blessing or a curse to thyself, and useful or a worthless member of the community. Prepare him early with instruction, and season his mind with maxims of truth. Watch the bent of his inclinations, set him right in his youth, and let no evil habit gain strength with his years. So shall he rise like a cedar on the mountains. His head shall be seen above the trees of the forest. A wicked son is a reproach to his father, but he that doth right is an honor to his gray hairs. The soil is thy own. Let it not want cultivation. The seed which thou sowest, that also shalt thou reap. Teach him obedience, and he shall be blessed thee. Teach him modesty, and he shall not be ashamed. Teach him gratitude, and he shall receive benefits. Teach him charity, and he shall gain love. Teach him temperance, and he shall have health. Teach him prudence, and fortune shall attend him. Teach him justice, and he shall be honored by the world. Teach him sincerity, and his own heart shall not reproach him. Teach him diligence, and his wealth shall increase. Teach him benevolence, and his mind shall be exalted. Teach him science, and his life shall be useful. Teach him religion, and his death shall be happy. So this was a chapter 23 dealing with holy instructions for thy children. Circle 7 Quran, divinely prepared by Prophet Noble Jew Ali. And once again, reiteration, holy books for character building, humbleness, navigational compass. And in this chapter, we see that it's an imperative to get the beneficiaries, the people that are going to continue the estate, the irrevocable trusts of whatever business, whatever, rather, and that's on a community level, family level, a trust, competent heir. What is being instilled in the heir? That's the key too. And that's back to the culture, back to knowing the culture, back to knowing law. You're going to bring little people into the world, they're going to grow up on business. Look at other nationalities of people. You cannot stop overlooking that people that know their culture, how they raising their children. They running businesses. They at the cash register. 13, 12. You know what I mean? So holy instruction for thy children. Right? Any questions, statements, thoughts?
I thought about 2 and 3 make 5, and that's the 5th house in astrology, and that's children or creation. But you create children with Sam, and the sun, controls that, creation, and the sun is justice as well. So when you're teaching, your children, your creation, the real justice in society, so they can be contributing to society and not just some bum. You know what I mean? But that's what I thought about. I was like, oh, that made me think about the 5th house and children. And that is the crop, their minds are like gardens, as all of our minds are gardens, and they're like a fertile garden as you're breaking up the dirt. You can drop seeds in there, what I mean, to grow whatever you grow. But I yield on that. But,
Wow. That's fair. That's fire right there. That was a fire analysis, synopsis of that. Any other thoughts on this chapter? So once again, in summary, unify the people. We got fundamental boots on the ground activities that need to take place, which is, can a man or woman just walking down the street run into you and get illuminated wisdom, civic instructions? Right? That's the goal. And then after that, the numbers get bigger, the community gets bigger, the finances get bigger. Now we're in preparation to go to another level. That's where the trust law competency on law in general, because once you start fixing up stuff, putting interest in property, you need to know what that means, right? You have an interest in it. You look up any adverse possession law or any municipal, even the municipal instructions are there. You got the right to do it just based on you fixed it up. You put some drywall, some solar panel. Not only we're talking about this in trust, that's a whole nother. I'm just letting you know that it covers both scopes. That's the next level. Physical acquisition of property for the purpose of businesses, schools, etc. Then just keep getting property, right? Now we can rent it out, and that'll be a Morris business that's attached to the organization. So, we're talking about land, acquiring land, getting some farming going. We get to the point where we can feed ourselves. We're not worried about going out making, what are we going out making paper money for? Paper, Federal Reserve notes, fiat. Why are we worried about making fiat? It's to feed ourselves, put clothes on our back. So if we can get to a point where we can feed ourselves from the earth, you're not really, and we got housing. That's the motto. That's what we're trending towards. Ideally, there's other people doing that in multiple areas, and then we'll link up to form confederations. Like some of the elders is trying to do right now, get international standing, political legitimacy, right? But before that, we need some unity locally. We need to show and prove locally that we at least can get to a Chinatown, Koreatown level. Right, so that's all I got for today. Any before I close out, I'll do one more round for thoughts. We close out in the prayer here. Comments. Which came in. She came in late. I'm gonna let her know we're about to close out. But luckily I recorded. Empress Ari, I recorded it. We're about to close out right now, but I definitely recorded it. I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's all good. So I'm gonna do one more round for just any thoughts, anything at all before we go into the prayer and close out. All right. So Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali, Islam. I want to say peace and love to everybody. Hope everybody have a beautiful rest of their Sunday. And just tap in with me. I think most people have my communication. Just reach out. We can talk about anything. And let's keep, getting this momentum, keep building. And peace and love. Islam.
Peace and love.